Well, welcome back. This is day number 2, lesson 1-3 on integers and absolute values. We're going to start out with the example that's in your book on temperature. This is on page 35 in your book if you follow along. It says a record high temperature of 114 degrees Fahrenheit was recorded in Kentucky in 1930. In 1963, the record low temperature was negative 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Question is, what does a temperature of negative 34 degrees represent, and which temperature is closer to 0? Well, the way that we're going to talk about that, with 0 as a starting point, 34 degrees below 0 we can think of as a negative number. A negative number is simply a number that's less than 0, which means a positive number, like 114, is a number greater than 0. Okay, numbers like negative 34 and positive 114 in our example are called integers. These are whole numbers that can be positive or negative. So an integer is simply any number from the set of numbers that includes positive, negative numbers, and 0. And it goes to infinity on either end. Okay? So numbers less than 0 negative, numbers to the right of 0 are positive on our number line. To graph an integer, what we're going to do is we're going to locate the point that corresponds to that integer on a number line, and we're going to make just a solid dot, okay, wherever that value is. That's called a coordinate. When we make that dot, that's the coordinate of the integer. And here's an example on a number line showing the graphs of some points that have coordinates negative 5 and positive 4. See, here's negative 5, there's a dot, positive 4, and there's a dot. Notice that negative 5 is to the left of 4 on the number line, which means that negative 5 is less than positive 4. Okay, we're going to be working with some things called inequalities, the greater than, less than symbols. Those are called inequalities when we have less than and greater than. Remember, less than is the one that kind of looks like the letter L if you tip it. Okay, greater than is the one that's open and then goes to a point. So let's take a look. Negative 5 is less than 4 is how we read this one, because that's the less than sign. An equivalent statement would be 4 is greater than negative 5. Okay? So that's how we read those. If we want to compare some integers, we can do that on a number line. It says replace the gray dot with less than or greater than to make a true sentence. Well, we need to graph the 2 points, negative 2 and negative 4, which we've done here on the number line. And remember, whichever one is on the left is less than, the one on the right is greater than. But we have these in reverse order. Okay, so we have to be very careful with our signs. So it says since negative 2 is to the right of negative 4, it is bigger. Remember, it is greater than. So the symbol that would go in there is negative 2 is greater than negative 4. Okay, I want to show you one other thing here. We could also write negative 4 is less than negative 2. It's another way we could write that, but it wasn't given to us in that order. So to make that sentence true, that's how we would write it. Okay? The distance between a number and 0 on a number line is called its absolute value. Okay, absolute value. So here's an example. We have a positive 4 and a negative 4. Well, each of those are the exact same number of units away from 0. So when you think about absolute values, it tells you the distance away from 0 it is on a number line. The symbol that we use for absolute value is 2 vertical bars on either side of the number. That looks just like this. So the absolute value of negative 4 is 4, and the absolute value of positive 4 is 4. Remember, we're talking about a distance, so you will never get a negative distance. So absolute values are always positive. Here's some examples. Evaluate the absolute value of negative 7. They're asking how far away is negative 7 from 0 on a number line. Well, it's 7 units away, so it's 7. Evaluate the absolute value of 5 plus the absolute value of negative 6. Well, to evaluate this one, how far away from 0 is 5? It is 5 units away. How far away from 0 is negative 6? It is 6 units away, so the absolute value of each of those added together gives us 11. How about over here? It says evaluate 8 plus the absolute value of n if n is equal to negative 12. So 8 plus the absolute value of n, first we have to substitute in the negative 12 for n. So 8 plus the absolute value of n is equal to 8 plus the absolute value of negative 12. Well, this is really 12, so 8 plus 12 is 20. And here's another example. Evaluate 5 minus 3 plus 8 minus 10, their absolute values. Well, just evaluate those one at a time. 5 minus 3 is a positive 2. 8 minus 10 is a negative 2. But when we take the absolute value of each of those, we get 2 plus 2, which is 4. Okay, so those are pretty easy to work with. You can also use an absolute value expression to find the distance between a number and 0. We've talked about that on a number line. So here's an example from real life. Snakes. Not one of my favorite topics. A tank used to keep a pet snake should be kept at a temperature of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take 5 degrees. Graph the equation, the absolute value of x minus 80 equal to 5, to determine the least and the greatest temperatures. Okay? So if we want to do that, what that means is the distance between x and 80 is 5 units. So we're going to start at 80 and we're going to move 5 units on either side of 80 to find out what those values could be. So instead of 0 as our starting point, 80 is our starting point. If we go 5 units to the right, we end up at 85. 5 units to the left, we end up at 75. So the values that will work for us is anything in between 75 and 85. And the way we represent that is with these funny brackets with a comma between them. Okay, that's called set notation. Your assignment for tomorrow, please fill in your notables, section 1-3, pages 9 through 11. And we'll be taking a look at those to make sure that you've watched the video. If you have any questions, be sure to ask and write those in your notables. It's a great place to record anytime you have questions. Have a good evening. We'll see you tomorrow.